Welcome to this tutorial. We are going to be looking at checking neighbors using an array. So I have a main method with two integer arrays, and I want to write a method to determine if they're ascending. It's be public static. It'll return a Boolean, and the name of it will be is ascending. And we'll take in an integer array called numbers. And let's define ascending for the purposes of this example. As we move from left to right, we should see the values go up or stay the same, but we don't want them to go down. So the first one is an ascending array, and the second one is not an ascending array because we go from 7 to 5. So my approach to writing these types of methods is that I'm going to make an assertion that the arrays that I'm looking at are actually ascending. And so by default, I'm just returning true. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through the array, looking at all neighboring pairs to determine if I can find an instance like this where it breaks the rule to being an ascending array. So this is going to be a typical for loop, and I'm going to go through the numbers array, except I'm going to go through length minus 1. So why am I doing length minus 1? This is an important concept. Length minus 1 means I'm not hitting the last index. So why? Why am I doing that? Well, there's 5 values in here, but there's only actually 4 neighbors. This one is a neighboring pair. This is a pair. This is another pair. And this is another pair. So that's only 4 pairs. That's because 9 does not have a neighbor on its right. So we don't want to try to evaluate 9 against its right neighbor. So here we're going to check the neighbor on the left, which is at I, to see if it is larger than the element on its left. And we're going to say I plus 1. That will be the neighbor to its right. So if that's the case, I know it breaks the rule for being ascending, and I can return false. Now, if I complete the loop and I haven't found any instance in which the neighboring pairs violate the rule, then it will return true. So let's go ahead and call this method on with each of these arrays. We'll pass in numbers 1, and we'll repeat, and we'll pass in numbers 2. So we should be expecting a true and a false. Very nice. In this example, we'll code a method called counting neighboring pairs. If we were to pass in our array numbers 1 into this, we would count all the pairs that are matching. So these don't match, but 4 and 4 match. So this is a pair, this is a matching pair, and this is a matching pair. So in this particular method, this particular array, we would expect this method to return 3. So we start by creating a count variable because we'll have to count something and then return the count. In the middle, we're going to check each of the pairs. So we're going to start our loop at index 0, and we're going to go up to the end, but not all the way to the end. So we're going to go to length minus 1. And that's because we're going to check the value at index I to its neighbor at I plus 1. Whenever we see I plus 1, that should be a flag that we have to be careful that we don't go out of bounds. We can't allow I to equal the last index because the last index does not have a neighbor at I plus 1. So if they match, if the neighbors match, we'll count them and then we'll return the count. So let's test this to make sure it works. and this should print 3. In this tutorial, we looked at two methods that compared neighbors, and we did have to remember to make sure we didn't have a bounds error in our loop.